£22 billion black hole in the public finances left by the party opposites.
A major breaking story tonight is that the Prime Minister reportedly knew there was no black hole in the public finances, and yet he still allowed Rachel Reeves to stand at the dispatch box and warn Britain of a shortfall that simply did not exist. Not true. BS. Fantasy. Dreamland. Downing Street tonight says Rachel Reeves' claims were, quote, entirely accurate, but the OBR's own published accounts show the Treasury overstated the problem, exaggerated the gap and talked up a crisis just to justify £30 billion worth of tax rises. Britain now suffering the highest tax burden in history. And Labour's biggest donor has also turned on the Chancellor tonight, with the head of the Unite Union, Sharon Graham, accusing Reeves of betraying workers with her budget. So is it time for both the Chancellor and indeed the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, to resign and fall on their sword? With me now is the political commentator Benedict Spence. Benedict, two really damning front pages in the papers tomorrow, the Telegraph and the Mail. What's your take? Is it time for him to go and take Reeves with him?
Well, I think it's high time that this administration was actually shown the back door and actually got rid of. But finally, it seems that we have something that we can particularly nail them to. I think that this is an egregious thing to have happened, and for so much time now the country has been sort of laboring under this impression that actually there was this dreadful shortfall in the public finances, and that this was going to be what was used to justify a significant uptick in our taxation. This has led to real world consequences. This will have had business implications. People will have decided whether or not they are going to emigrate from this country, whether or not they are going to invest or not in this country as a result of the scaremongering that was coming out. Quite aside from the fact that the public may well have been lied to, there have been consequences as a result of this. And I think it's pretty disgraceful, frankly, that this has been used potentially as a cover simply for a series of ideological tax rises to fund welfare because the party is not mature enough to cut spending. Yes, I think finally this is the moment at which most people, including a lot of Labour backbenchers, I think, should be able to get the gumption and say these two need to go.
Yeah, and there's so many different strands to this. It's developing actually hour by hour. Apparently the head of the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, has hinted, Mel Stride, the Shadow Chancellor, has written to the head of the FCA basically saying that it was market manipulation. Gilt yields were volatile, the markets were volatile in the lead up to the budget because Rachel Reeves was giving a doom-mongering warning to the country and to our financial institutions. And actually that was all fueled by a nonsensical black hole. So Mel Stride at least is saying this is market manipulation, market abuse. Forget resigning, she needs to face some sort of criminal investigation.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living, and maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
I think if there are grounds for an investigation, then they absolutely have to be investigated. Just because you're the Chancellor of the Exchequer doesn't mean that you can get away with this sort of thing. But, I just sort of, I go back ultimately to the sheer amount of pain that has actually been inflicted on so many taxpayers in this country, and the fact that we've also seen as a result of this a trend beginning in terms of younger people, especially younger people, beginning the process of emigrating from this country because they don't see much of a future because of the tax burden that's being placed on them. As you alluded to earlier on, this is now the highest tax burden in this country's history. You'd think we were at war or something like that to try and justify that, but we're not. All that this is because this party that came into government promising a new grown-up approach to politics, as it turns out, didn't have much of a plan, doesn't have the wherewithal to face down its own backbenchers, cannot get it into its head that you have to cut spending at some point if you are going to stop the ever-growing bloat of the state. That is why we have all been put in this position, and if it turns out that that people have been misled, I think people would be absolutely furious. We were talking about whether or not the Prime Minister and the Chancellor had broken an election manifesto, a manifesto pledge by saying, would she put up income tax, would she not? I think this is of altogether measure significantly more serious than this.
All right, Benedict, hold on the line. Stephen Pound is here, former Labour MP. Stephen, good morning. Thank you for joining us. And not a good look, is it, these front pages tomorrow for Starmer and Reeves? Who of them should go? Maybe both of them, Stephen?
Absolutely no. It'd be ludicrous. It'd be completely unpatriotic even to think about junking, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Prime Minister. What that happened, there'd be a run on the bond
market. Hang on a minute,
Stephen.
Unpatriotic. She's been caught metaphorically with her pants down lying. She's got a nose bigger than Pinocchio.
Sorry, I mean, that's not worthy of you. You're a better journalist than that. You don't use expressions like that. Look, she's not being caught in any way, shape or form. This is a speculative piece of analysis. Had there been any evidence whatsoever that there had not been this so-called black hole, do you not think it would have come out in the last 14 months? I mean, come on. I mean, people have been sitting on this since June last year, and they've only now revealed it. I'm sorry, this is just specious. You can argue one way or the other whether it's
so the OBR's lying, are they, Stephen?
Sorry?
The OBR's lying, are they?
No, of course they're not lying. What happens is people have different views on different... I mean, lies, damned lies and statistics may well be the truth, but the reality is that one economist will say there is, another economist will say there isn't. So the evidence that the Chancellor of the Exchequer had when she was a shadow Chancellor, and now she's the Chancellor, was that there is a massive shortfall in the amount of expenditure, the difference between what we spend and what we earn. And there's nobody can possibly deny that. Are you seriously suggesting that in the last days of Rishi Sunak's government, we were actually swimming in cash and we had no need to borrow because they were borrowing like sailors on shore leave?
Benedict, your response to that?
I mean, I'm prepared to believe that there is a shortfall, is the thing. But the point is it actually that large? And this is, I think, part of the problem. And, I take Stephen's point, which is, of course, the age-old adage that you can always find an economist to sort of fit your particular viewpoint. But ultimately, what we have here then, if we, let's say hypothetically, that we're not going to lose the Chancellor, and I don't actually think that the Chancellor will resign. I don't think that, that she or Keir Starmer would ever have the gumption to do it of their own volition. I think they'd have to be forced out anyway. But I don't see how the Chancellor can survive and the Office for Budgetary Responsibility survive as well. I don't see how it can be that you have this organisation that's supposed to sort of sit atop all of this and be separate, saying, actually, no, we're going to be starting to publish minutes and we're going to be publishing correspondence to say that what the Chancellor has been saying is not in fact true. How can you have these two offices of state sort of going off at each other? How can the OBR survive in that case? Either way, something's got to give, and it's not going to be the Chancellor. Maybe it has to be the OBR, because I don't see how these two things can continue in this bizarre sort of dance at the moment. Clearly, one of them has to be telling the truth, and the other one isn't. I would like to know which one it is.
Come on, Stephen. Who's going? Who's falling on their sword? The OBR or Rachel Reeves?
Yeah, well, no. The reality is that the OBR have got questions to answer. When George Osborne set up the OBR, if you remember, the idea was that this was going to be the Simon Pure or agency outside political intervention that could actually come up with the truth and the reality. Because politicians are so-and-sos when it comes to actually talking about the national debt and the need to raise taxes. So the idea was we're going to take it away from the political arena and have these people completely objective, entirely intelligent economists and statisticians, and they were going to come up with stats and facts. The reality is Benedict makes good points, and he always does, but the reality is is that the OBR have come up with one set of figures. A couple of weeks later, they come up with another. A couple of months later, they come up with yet another. So the idea that the Chancellor of the Exchequer has somehow got access to perfect data, my friend, perfect data doesn't exist anywhere in the world, not particularly in the world of economics.
Well, it's interesting. I didn't see people piping up to defend Liz Truss when the OBR screwed her over and she was calling for the abolition of the OBR. But now it's a Labour Chancellor. The OBR's wrong.
The bond market's pulled the rug on Liz Truss. What Liz Truss lost was international credibility. Since the Rachel Reeves budget on Wednesday, the bond markets have strengthened. The FTSE's gone up, and the pound is stronger against the dollar. All the indications are that she's actually done a decent job. This is not politics.
People are still skint. They can't afford. Stephen, people are still, they don't care about the FTSE being up. People are still skint. They can't afford their energy bills. Cost of living is going through the roof, etc., etc. And by the way, talk about credibility. Rachel Reeves, question marks over her expenses at HBOS, question marks over was she really an economist at the Bank of England, question marks over the fiasco with the property she was renting out from a few weeks ago, question marks now over the black hole. If this was 20 years ago, Stephen, you're not a stupid guy. You're a veteran former Labour MP. They would have resigned after one of these scandals, let alone 3, 4, 5 of them. It's a disgrace. No one takes responsibility. And I said last night, we sit there and mutter about it and then we move on.
Who was the last person to do it? Hugh Dalton was the Chancellor of the Exchequer who resigned in 1947 because he leaked one line of the budget. You come up with 4 different stories. One is the thing, when she was at HBOS and she was putting a part of that management team that used to buy gifts for people on their birthdays and they're leaving. That wasn't dodgy expenses. And as for the credibility of where she was working, I don't think there's any argument about that. Yes, she made an error on her Southwark flat, no question about that. But, let he who is without sin cast the first stone when it comes to actually dealing with Southwark Borough Council, mate.
Yeah, all right. Just reminds me of Keith Vaz and washing machines, regardless of what goes on. Teflon Keith, he's all right. Benedict, thanks very much. Stephen, thank you. Appreciate your company. Sweet dreams.
Nice to see you, Benedict.
And we'll catch up soon. Right.